guys, Christina Marie here, and today we're doing a low energy video for a couple of reasons. One, my last video was so out of character for me. I'm still exhausted from it. I was running around with the cats and filming from different angles, and I had one too many shots of espresso, I assume. Reason number two is I'm tired from work. I literally just got home, and this is the only time that I can film, simply because daylight, but also because I'm probably going to go to sleep after this because I didn't get much sleep last night. Yada, yada, yada. What do you care? Anyway, today I want to do a discussion video, even just to, may not even be a discussion, more of a sharing video. I've been doing a lot of those lately. So my new friend Jenna Claire over at Jenna Claire K, who I will link down below, recently filmed a video called How I Got Into Reading. And that actually really inspired me to share my story about how I got into reading, simply because I love hearing those kinds of things, and you just realize that all of our stories are so different. Now, I've been reading since I was about 4 or 5 years old. I still have a lot of the childhood books that I used to read. They're over at my mom's house in LA, of course, but you know, I still have them. And I don't necessarily recall the exact timeline, of course, because that was over 20 plus years ago, but it's such a cool story to hear, you know, different stories to hear, mainly because sometimes those stories, you realize how similar you are to someone or even how different you are to someone, but even so, it's just really, really cool to learn. So I thought I would share a little bit about how I got into reading. So I was born in the 80s, and the very first book series that I specifically remember owning were those Just Ask books that were very science driven, like what are mountains? What is the sky? What is water? You know, they were asking these very basic questions that children would have. These books I think were created in like 1985, 1986, and I had all of them. It was like these little skinny science books that had a little mouse on the cover of them, and each book addressed a certain scientific phenomenon, I guess. And those were the books that I remember reading all of the time. I loved those books because I was a curious kid. And so my mom ordered that little book series for me. And I had all of them. I remember giving them away when I got too old, but I loved reading about how things happen. What is the solar system? You know, what are animals? What are plants? You know, just things like that. And it was so cool to just read those books. They were so tiny, you know, little children's books that would just basically explain biology, you know, and just life and the earth in the simplest of ways. Now, of course, as I got older, I got into Babysitter's Club and Little Sister's Little Sister Club or something like that. I read a lot of things like that. I read a lot of Goosebumps Choose Your Own Adventure. Oh my gosh. Those were my favorite things to read. Especially the Choose Your Own Adventure. Yeah, I didn't really do the main Goosebumps books. I mean, I did a few, but the Choose Your Own Adventure, like, it was so much fun because you had so many different stories. Same kind of, you know, setting, but so many different stories in one book, because you turn to page 72 to go left, and then you turn page 85 to go right, and then one was death and one continued the story. So it was fun reading those kinds of stories. And then I got into like Animorphs and things like that. I really loved those cereal books. Those were a lot of fun. But then my grown self thought that because I was 16 years old, I could graduate to certain books. So I got Outlander when I was 16 years old. I got a couple of Eric Jerome Dickey books. Eric Jerome Dickey is not a book or an author for teenagers. But my mom was like, whatever, here, read. But I read Outlander when I was 16 years old, which is not, you know, a teenage appropriate book. I read a lot of adult fiction. Oh my gosh, remember the Shel Silverstein or Silverstein poem books? I had all of those. Things like that. But no, I went to Outlander. Like Outlander, I was like, this huge book, I want to read a huge book. And when I turned 16, like I said, I thought I was grown, so I wanted to read adult books. So I would go to the Crown bookstore, which is what it was called. It was a bookstore that existed back in the like 90s, Crown bookstore. I would go there and just be there, and I would look at all the adult books. I remember finding Nora Roberts and being bored by whatever she was doing. I remember Danielle Steele, and I was like, I'm not about this life. Yeah, just reading all kinds of things because I was so curious. But then when I graduated from high school, I went to college and was just kind of like, well, college. Let's figure out college. I was going to be reading so much in college that I stopped reading for pleasure and read more for academia, of course. So because when I was a freshman in college, I was a sociology major, I read a lot of sociology-based books, a lot of books based around like people and history, stuff like that. But then I switched my major to ethnic studies with an emphasis in ethnomusicology. So I got to read a lot of cultural books on the origins of various musical styles, stuff like that, you know, Black history, Chinese history, Japanese history. I read a book on Tibetan monk music. So much fun. Read a book on bluegrass. Tons of fun. But then probably around my junior year of college, I got a little bored with academia because mainly I had finished my major by the summer after my junior year. So my senior year was going to be pretty easy. So I gave myself permission to kind of immerse myself back into, you know, books. Don't ask me how, don't ask me why. Actually, backtracking, I was introduced to Harry Potter when I was 14. When I was 14 years old, I was going into high school. And I thought Harry Potter was I don't curse on this channel, was the crappiest series I had ever read. But I had to read it because it was required reading. So I read it and I hated it because it was forced upon me. And then I just never even bothered with Harry Potter. When I was in college and I was maybe a sophomore or junior, Harry Potter movies were still coming out. So I remember going to the theater out in Westwood, which is our little college town in LA. I went to UCLA. And there would be lines of people who would dress up, you know, as wizards and stuff like that and witches. And I would go, but I wouldn't dress up because I'm not about that life. And I would just go and hang out and I would see the movies, and I never did read the books. I would just go because I wanted to be amongst the people. But this is back when Barnes & Noble would have like those, and Borders would have those midnight release parties when the books came out and things like that. That intrigued me and got me back into reading, but not necessarily Harry Potter, because I would always go with friends who would be going there for the Harry Potter release parties and stuff like that. I would wander around the young adult section and just look at books. And that's how I found City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This was probably about 2008, 2009, something like that. Which is what reignited my love for reading. When I got my hands on City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, I was like, ugh. And I just ended up devouring the book, falling in love with the series, and it just kind of took off from there. I was introduced to various books in high school. You know how you have your required reading list, things like that. So I was introduced to Catcher in the Rye, Romeo and Juliet, The Great Gatsby, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Their Eyes Are Watching God. And the funny part is, while Their Eyes Are Watching God is one of my favorite books, I was introduced to my favorite classic series because of a movie. And my favorite classic series of all time is the Anne of Green Gables series by Ellen Montgomery. And I was introduced to that in 11th grade. 11th grade is wrong. I was introduced to Anne of Green Gables in 8th grade because I remember we all got together, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders came into one classroom and just watched the film. And I was so fascinated with the story of Anne and Gilbert, that I ended up wanting to read the books. So I went home and told my mom, and my mom got the books for me. So I had the whole box set, and I was just reading them. And then when I was in high school, that's when I discovered that there were more Anne of Green Gables stories. And so I ended up watching those movies as Anne and Gilbert got older. And so I actually have them. I'm looking at them right here, all three of them right there. Gilbert Blythe is like my favorite male character, fictional character ever. And I remember being in love with this story. It was just so simple. It was just a simple story, but so much fun, and I just adored it. And so I remember just loving that so much. So I kind of carried that passion for reading throughout high school. Like I said, when I got to college, it just kind of fell to the wayside a little bit, mainly because I knew I was going to be reading because I had to. So I was like, why am I going to be reading because I have to and reading because I want to? Some gotta go. And I said, reading because I want to is not going to keep me in school. So I ended up just kind of focusing more on my studies and gave up on reading for pleasure throughout college until about my senior year of college. Then when I graduated from college, I pretty much was like, I have more than enough free time. I have nothing but free time because I didn't have a job, because that was right around the time that the recession really, hit, and they weren't hiring very many people, especially in Los Angeles, coming right out of college. It was just very unfortunate. I was a humanities, major, and I didn't really have much to offer at the time. So I ended up just kind of moving back home with my mom, getting a little part-time job, and just reading, which is how I got into Cassandra Clare. Because like I said, once I discovered City of Bones, I just started reading the books, just reading them. I moved out to Kansas City in 2010 because of a job offer, blah. And so I moved out here by myself. And so I had no friends, no family. I was starting all over, which is seriously wasn't one of the most liberating things I had ever done. I was responsible for my own everything. And so I said, well, no friends, no family, no nothing, let's read. So I would read everything. And I literally just started picking up books, reading them, all the things. And whenever I would run out of recommendations or run out of options, I would go online and I would just look at, book reviews or the local library stuff, Twitter when Twitter came around, Facebook when Facebook came around. Facebook came around when I was just starting college. Yeah, of course, through doing all that internet, searching, BookTube, made its way into my life probably about 3 years after I moved to Kansas City, and that's how I'm here. So all of this stuff, like BookTube, I happened upon. There was no like, hey, I want to make videos where I talk about books, and that's not my story. My BookTube story is another story. But yeah, reading has always been a part of my life. It's always been something that I enjoyed doing. It's always been something that I felt was important for me to continue doing because I'm such an imaginative person. I'm a creative person, so I constantly need to have some kind of stimulation to keep, the gears going. So yeah, that's my story. That's my reading story, I guess. Not the most fascinating story, not the most interesting, but it is mine and I love it. So would love to know how you guys got into reading. If it's similar to my story, let me know. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for more videos, of course, and I will see you guys in my next one. Apparently Bailey wants to say bye. You want to say bye? Come on. Oh. Okay, he hates it. Okay, bye guys.